Quite a bit of content to cover today. I thought this would be fewer things, and as we got closer, there was more to talk about. We're going to pretty much recap everything we talked about last time, and then we're going to spend some time talking about the department's mandatory vaccination policy and how that's impacting state employees personally. So before we get to that, Liam, would you like to make an announcement?
Yes, Senator, thank you. This is an unusual situation that we're having a hearing during the time that our office is doing some hiring. So I thought this might be a good venue to make an announcement that Senate Council is looking to fill a position to staff this committee, as well as the DHS Licensing Committee. This is the position that was most recently held by Pat Oswald, and before that, for those who've been around for a while, it was filled by Joan White. And I just wanted to mention that we're looking either for an attorney, someone who has their JD and has been admitted to the bar, or we're considering filling that position with an analyst like me, someone who's not an attorney, but has a background in public policy. And so there's two ways to fulfill that minimum requirement. One is to have a master's degree in public policy. The other option is you could have a bachelor's degree in public policy and meet the minimum work requirements. And then the only other thing I wanted to add, just so it was clear, we are a nonpartisan office. And so a successful candidate will need to be able to demonstrate that they have a nonpartisan background. And so anybody, the folks at home who are watching, if you know anybody who might be interested in applying, please encourage them to do so. We'll be taking applications, I think, for the next couple of weeks. So please, if you know someone, encourage them to apply. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. And then this hearing is brought to you by Senate Council. So a good place to work and to be a great part of a team. So yeah, we need somebody really, you forgot to say we need somebody really good, but you know, it's a challenging job, but I have to think it's kind of rewarding to see your fingerprints on state policy. So with that, let's move on. And so on the latest schedule I have, we're going to stick to that pretty well, except we're going to do the elderly waiver thing, number 2. Those will both be short. And we're not going to solve everything today, where there is going to be some discussions. Note to the testifiers who are on, especially the Childcare Stabilization people and the subminimum wage people, you get 2 minutes. And if you could address not the on childcare, just prepare your minds to discuss what the department has brought forward as alternatives. I do not want to revisit all the issues we've talked about forever about that. That's not productive to what we're going to try to decide today. And on the subminimum wage, I would like you to react to the draft I put out, where we're going to broaden, where I'm suggesting we broaden out the membership and talk about what happens later on. And so again, those are 2 minutes at the most, and I will ask you to stop if you go past that. We just don't have a lot of time. The big topic is going to be this state employee thing. So anyway, and the first one might just simply be an announcement, but I'm happy to take just comments from members, and Maren Halden's here as a resource if we want her. So last time we talked about what happens if you have a person who really doesn't do well not in person, and the facility has a vaccine requirement, and the person is medically contraindicated from getting a vaccine, and their best place to go is in person. And so a number of things came up about that, and this is where it is. It's actually some progress. We discovered that we could discuss this at great length, but I don't know that it's productive. But so we discovered that a place can ask anything they want of anybody at any place. at any site in there, they get asked in front of the group, how is your disease coming? Which I thought was kind of shocking, or have you had the vaccine or not, et cetera. And so I'm going to work on legislation, and we do have a draft, but it wasn't far enough along to share with you all, but that would basically say that if you are under guardianship, that those kind of questions, how they're going to be discussed, should be handled in the service agreement. And that's the hardest part to write down, apparently. The others is that there should be simply respect when you're asking people medical questions and privacy, and they should be done in a place that's private. And there's a few more elements to it than that, but we will talk about that at a hearing. And so, but that's the highlights of it. And then finally, if you feel that somebody has been not treated well with regard to their Title I rights, that's a matter to take up. It's hard to put a policy about that with the vaccine thing. And so if you feel that your rights have been violated, then that's something you would take up with the provider and maybe even sue them or something. Or use the services of the Disability Law Center on a case-by-case basis to intervene and deal with that. So I believe that's a good resolution. Any comments from members? And if I don't always see your hand, just don't be shy to talk. Senator Hoffman.
Yeah, no, when you're talking about the unique and individualized needs of somebody with their disability, and then I think you lay it out right, Senator Abler, that the Disability Law Center, which is our protection and advocacy, a group in the state of Minnesota, probably forgets more in a day than you and I'll ever know when it comes to the ADA or those provisions under Title I or Title II. And so I think that makes sense. I think it's just a matter of how that process works out. And I know is Maren on. I think that's a work in progress that you're leading on, and I appreciate you doing that. But I think it totally makes sense to stay within that process, because we're talking about the unique and individualized needs of that person and their disability.
Yeah, and then this would go through the regular legislative process. It would not be part of any special session or anything. It's not an emergency. It's just a really important thing. But I do want to tell the individuals who are running operations, for heaven's sakes, have a clue about how you ask people questions, and just remember who you're asking. You shouldn't need a law to say if a person is their guardianship, talk to the guardian. It shouldn't need a law to say don't ask them in the lunchroom about any medical status or private status. How's your mom? Is she out of jail yet? I mean, just have a clue. And so we write laws because there's a gap, and just restore common sense. And then this will be just a casual thing. I think that's enough of that one. The next one we're going to talk about is number 3, elderly waiver, disproportionate share. And I'll summarize it. And there's testifiers here. I don't know if we're going to need to go there, but so the circumstance was this. We passed a law that said to get this disproportionate share, you have to have 80% elderly waiver in your facility. And upon further review, what people would have liked would have been if you have 80% people on some kind of medical assistance waiver program, either CADI or TBI or DD or whatever. And so that's problematic. So we passed a bill saying 80% elderly waiver, which apparently doesn't help enough people. And so there's discussions, and perhaps for a special session, I don't know if I'm comfortable yet with that, but this is where I want people to feedback offline to me. So the proposal is to move the 80% elderly waiver only to 90% mix. And so if you had 60% elderly waiver and 30% CADI, then you could qualify for the share. But the share would only be given on the elderly waiver population. So it's a matter of how you get in the door. And apparently that's a fiscally neutral proposal. And so again, offline, if you're watching this and you happen to have a place that has 81% elderly waiver and nobody else, you're going to be locked out of this. And so that concerns me if there's very many of those around. So this is where it sits. It's in discussion. I've asked DHS for a listing of how many people, how many sites that might be. And as a person who's been trying to help disproportionate share places, for a long time. I don't want to cause harm to that process. So any questions from members? Elise or Lauren, do you want to fill in any gaps I left, or is that good enough? Oh, Elise, I got a thumbs up from Elise. How about that? And Mr. Coleman, did you just want to, does that sound fair to what we talked about? You're free to say hello if you want.
I think you summarized it well.
Okay, so please engage with us. This one might move faster, especially if personally I am convinced, but if you have a place in your district, so members or if the observers here know somebody who's got one of these places that's going to be carved out, I need to know that, please. So, okay, that's that. So now we're going to talk about childcare stabilization. Oh, Senator Wickland, hi.
Yeah, hi.
Sorry, I missed you.
Good morning. And I just wondered if you could make sure that if you collect data from DHS on, places that might be impacted by the proposal that you mentioned, if you could pass that on to the committee, that would be helpful.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Tom, will you take that responsibility so as things come in, let's try to copy all. And if you have an interest in this topic, let Tom know and he'll put you on the copy. I can tell you, closed door meetings during COVID are lousy. And some of the gaps, well, this is a case in point where this would have been discovered earlier. And we had a bigger fiscal note early on and it got shrunk a little bit, I think, because of this change. So thank you, that's good counsel. So that's my desire. So, all right, so childcare stabilization. And again, we're gonna hear from the department and then we're gonna hear from a couple testifiers. So Ms. Brown, you're here, is that right? And you have a handout, I guess. So.
I am here. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right. There is a handout. I believe everybody has that. Excellent. All right. Senator Abler, members of the committee. I'm Tiki Brown, Assistant Commissioner for the Children and Family Services Administration at the Minnesota Department of Human Services. At the hearing of this committee on September 15th, Cindy Yang, the Child Care Services Division Director, provided an update on the Child Care Stabilization Grant Program. You requested we come back to this hearing today to provide more information, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some more. So before I get into the details, I want to just start by reiterating the administration's commitment to continuing to stabilize the childcare industry and respond to childcare businesses and worker needs. Minnesota has been a leader across the country in prioritizing support for childcare providers and in the number of licensed centers and family childcare providers remaining operating throughout the pandemic. And this is a testament to the sacrifice and commitment of our childcare workforce and business owners. So we implemented the child care stabilization grants following federal law and guidance while conforming to state statute. Within these parameters, we sought to address the immediate needs of child care providers while building towards long-term solutions, avoiding creating overly complex and costly initiatives that create burdens for all stakeholders, and supporting the child care industry as an essential sector needed for COVID response and economic recovery. So these values continue to guide us and are included in the two areas the department was asked to look at more closely. Again, you have a handout with the background information, and the two areas include the complexity of the application used by childcare providers to apply for childcare stabilization base grants, and the funding formula for childcare stabilization base grants and its impacts on the grant award amounts for family childcare providers. So first, on the application complexity. After the hearing on September 15th, department staff reviewed the application closely and considered ways to reduce the number of questions. Your handout includes a table with all of the questions listed and the changes that were made. For family childcare providers, we're able to reduce the number of questions to just 4 questions for providers where they're the only individual regularly caring for children, and they have applied in the past for a stabilization base grant. In the vast majority of family child care homes, which is over 75%, the license holder is the only individual who regularly cares for children. And then there were 2 changes for center-based settings. The first one was focused on reducing the frequency that monthly operating expenses will need to be provided, and we pre-populated some FTE data from a provider's previous application. So the operating expense question will now only be asked once per quarter. Second, we focused on reducing data entry to respond to the request that we consider ways to save time entering data on hours worked by individual staff in the past month. So we understand this is especially time consuming for large centers with a very large number of staff employed. For the October application, we will pre-populate information from the previous application to ease provider burden, and we'll continue to explore and evaluate other ideas for saving childcare centers time doing data entry. So next I'll move into the funding formula. So on the funding formula, as you know, the legislature directed how grant amounts would be established. The department is required by state statute to award grants on a full-time equivalent or FTE staff basis spread out over 24 months. Additionally, it's required that grant amounts decrease starting in the second year, and that programs serving children receiving childcare assistance or early learning scholarships receive a higher grant amount. Statute also provided for financial hardship grants that will be targeted to programs most in need to help provide their businesses as the state emerges from the COVID-19 pandemic. Using all of these variables, the stabilization grants were allocated among 3 grant pools: year 1, year 2, and then those set aside for the financial hardship grants. So to implement the formula, the department defined 1 FTE as an individual working 32 hours per week or more caring for children. And just a note, caring for children does not include administrative, preparatory, or business management tasks. And so individuals caring for children less than 32 hours per week are considered fractions of an FTE. And so, for example, if an individual is caring for children 16 hours per week, they're considered a 0.5 FTE. And in our current plan, no individuals count as more than 1 FTE. So there's no standard, national or state definition of full-time. The FTE definition that was used in the formula aligns with the current employment statistics survey data that's been collected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So as of July 2021, that data shows that 32 hours per week is the average weekly hours that are worked in child daycare services nationally. So the department set the base grant amounts at $430 per FTE based upon the statutory requirements, the allocation of funds among the different grant pools, and the definition of what constitutes an FTE. So as you can see on table 2, on page 2 of the handout, the definitions of FTE that was used results in a current base grant amount that provides a fairly proportional distribution of funds across workers by provider type. This aligns with the legislative mandate that directs the majority of childcare stabilization grant funds to wages rather than other operational costs of the providers. And at the request of senators at that recent meeting on September 15th, the department staff ran scenarios to see how changes in the formula could impact each type of licensed or certified program. So the 2 scenarios that were considered, the first option was to allow all individuals to count for up to 2 FTEs if they work more than 32 hours per week. And then the second option was the same as option 1, except that the amounts per FTE was lowered to maintain the total amount spent in year 1 as currently planned at $153 million. So as you can see in the handout, under option 1, some childcare centers and family childcare providers would receive larger payments in year 1. However, if the per FTE base grant amounts is not reduced, this would require a reduction of approximately $26 million, or just more than 1/3 of the funds set aside for year 2. Shifting funds from year 2 to provide more funding in year 1 would reduce the amount of funds for providers in year 2. So just to give you an idea of how much smaller those grant amounts would be per FTE, in the first 8 months of year 2 under the current plan, the grant amounts are anticipated to be approximately $215 per FTE. And in the last 4 months of year 2, the amounts would be reduced again to approximately $172 per FTE. If we look at the option 1 scenario, taking funds from year 2 will make these grant amounts smaller still, with an estimated $150 per FTE in the first 6 months of year 2, and then $75 in the last 6 months of year 2. So 2 considerations for this option include ensuring award amounts are able to support continued stabilization, and whether or not grant payments this small may result in many providers choosing to forego applying for grants altogether in year 2. Looking at option 2, if we change the calculations of FTEs without additional funding, this results in family childcare receiving an increase in funding in the first year, while childcare centers and certified centers would see a reduction. However, to make this change without additional funding, the base grant amount would need to be reduced to $360 or $70 per FTE reduction. So under this option, some childcare providers would be helped by the change, allowing them to receive larger grants, but other providers would be hurt because their grant size would be smaller. So while we engaged family childcare providers shortly after the American Rescue Plan was signed into law, we have heard loud and clear that the stabilization grant funds should be allocated first to programs that need it the most. And so for that reason, we have reserved $70.5 million, which is 25% of the funds, towards those financial hardship grants. This aligns with what we've heard from providers. It aligns with the federal guidance, and it allows some flexibility in how these funds could be used for operating expenses. We think these grants could help address concerns about the distribution of funds in the base grants. So we have already begun planning engagements with childcare providers to inform final decisions related on how these financial hardship grants will be carried out. And we look forward to learning more from providers what specifically we can do to address this. Thank you for your time. I stand for any questions.
And thanks. Let's go to testimony. And I truly would like 2 minutes from each directed toward the testimony we just had about what to do. And I'll just offer my opinion. I think it should be tweaked in a way. I'm really surprised just on the grand scheme of things that here we have $300 million and it's not really $300 million. That's more money than we're going to probably see in the future. And here it's being considered kind of a challenge and almost a negative thing. And so Ms. Brown, welcome to government where $300 million is a problem. So anyway, so Ms. DeVos, if I said that right, welcome to the committee, and you heard the comments. And so the focus is on what you just heard. So if you could offer your comments about that on behalf of Senator, that would be nice. Thank you.
Hi, you did, and you pronounced it correctly. Thank you, Senator Abler, and members of the committee. My name is Karen DeVos. I own an early childhood center in Ada, Minnesota, which is a small rural area. And I have prepared comments, but I think it's
whatever you do in
best
2 minutes. You have 2 minutes to do what you want. I would prefer, I don't want your prepared comments. Rather have you talk about what you heard and what do you think we should do.
That's great.
Is that okay?
I'm really good with that. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing. I have a staff who, we're a small center. We're currently experiencing a situation where we have staff out on COVID quarantine because they're considered close contacts. And so my staff are working overtime, and that's not reflected in the FTEs. In addition, I'm coming in at 6:30 in the morning. I'm working until 6 p.m. in classroom and then doing the office work. I come from a family childcare background. I understand the struggles. I don't think that these stabilization grants were really intended to be a do-all end-all, if you will. And I don't understand why we're having a conversation that's really not unifying the field. At the end of the day, every one of my employees, every one of the people who works directly with children should be held to the same value as every family childcare provider, and vice versa. So if we have family childcare providers who are putting in full-time hours and then some, why should that be any different than the childcare center workers who are putting in full-time hours and then some? They should all be held to the same standard. It should be equitable. And we had this plan set forth. We were told how it was going to progress and how it was going to move forward. And so I told my staff they're getting these bonuses every month based on what we were told was happening. To go ahead and change that and to now have to let them know that, oh, sorry, I guess that's not happening. It's really unfair. It's not equitable. It shouldn't happen. We have this plan set forth. I really don't support any changes to the grants that would make the compensation grants inequitable among different settings. I don't care if you work in family childcare, nonprofit, for-profit center. We're all the same. We're all working for the benefit of young children. We're all doing the work, and it's hard work. We should all be treated the same. Our FTEs should all be the same.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for changing on the fly. Ms. Seidel, the same instruction to you, please. Could you please comment to what's in front of us? Welcome to the committee, by the way.
Thank you. Something's wrong with my camera here. I hope you can see me. I'm just.
I can see you. There you are.
This, for some reason, has turned into a center versus family childcare thing, which I'm not sure why that has come up the way that it has. This is about the children that we serve, about the families that we serve, and it's about stabilizing childcare in the state of Minnesota. All childcare, not just centers, not just the city, rural areas. The vast majority of this funding is going to the cities. The rural areas are family childcare. They're very small centers. They have gotten a very small amount of this funding, and those deserts that we have been talking about before the pandemic even started are getting worse. Something needs to change. We are not following federal guidelines. I brought this up in the last meeting, and no questions have been answered with that. The guidelines are clearly stating these are supposed to be substantial grants, that smaller childcare businesses are to be a priority. They have not been made a priority. We're not. Okay, here, let me put it this way. I did some research. DHS has stated that Minnesota has really been at the forefront of stabilizing childcare. Since January 1st of 2021, we have lost 500 family childcare providers. Since this grant was announced, we have lost 147 childcare providers. We did not know in advance like the centers did. There was obviously some discussion between centers and DHS as to what the grants were going to be. So we didn't get to tell employees or other people about money we didn't have to spend, that we were going to give that ahead of time. We had no idea what was coming up with this. We had no clue that our grants were going to be dropped to 1/3 of the amount that we were getting, and centers would still be getting close to the same amounts they have had. If you look at other states, Louisiana is paying $1,256 per child for base grant. Kansas is on a second round of their grants of $5,000 to family childcare. Maine is doing a 12-month program at $100 per month per licensed capacity plus add-ons. Texas is averaging awards of $6,900. Tennessee is $1,000 per child plus add-ons with that. South Carolina is on the fifth round.
Could you comment what's in front of us here? I mean, we don't have the opportunity to go back and change it all. So if you could just comment to what's been given us. Do you like either of the other proposals?
They don't go far enough. They're not following the federal guidelines, and I'm not understanding why the state doesn't need to follow the federal guidelines.
All right.
That's my biggest question. We're just not going to follow the federal guidelines, and we're not going to stabilize all childcare. We're just going to go after the big box centers and the Twin City area and forget about the rural areas, because that's exactly what this is doing.
I got it. If you had to pick one of the other two plans, do you have one that you think makes sense? The first one tends to front end load the money and get it out the door quicker, which is akin to what you're suggesting about having larger grants. The second one is they both incorporate the FTEs, but the second one is a lower number using existing money.
if this pandemic goes on for 2 years, there's going to be more federal funding coming down. The money is needed now. If there's providers out there that are behind on house payments, utilities, whatever, $430 a month is not going to help somebody catch up on their house payment. We have no idea about this other financial hardship grant. DHS has not talked to Family Childcare about it. They just stated that they're going to tell us what's coming out. They're going to let us know the end result without ever discussing any of that either. So we have no idea what stabilization is really out there.
I got it. So probably it just sounds like, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, which is dangerous, but it seems if you're looking for more front-end loading, the first option gets more money out the door quicker than the second one. So anyway, thank you for being here. Ms. Cunningham, how are you doing today? And if you could kind of answer the question we're trying to deal with, do you prefer the status quo or option 1 or option 2? Since those are what's in front of us, we could make 9 options. I would have thought of some other ones, but that's what we have. So welcome to the committee. Are you there?
Good. All right.
Hi,
Now
Linda.
I'm sorry.
Hi, Cindy. Good morning.
I'm sorry. I'm having technical watching children. Yeah, I'm not going to be on screen.
Okay.
Sorry, I was doing
You got,
technical.
like,
Sorry. I think my
Briefly, just
comments.
tell us what you think about the
Yep.
proposals in front of us.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks. Yeah, I'm concurring with Julie on the calculations, and that is partly because the legislation says it was to be awarded by FTEs, not calculated by FTE. So I think from the beginning, DHS has a problem with that. So there could be like a third option. I would also probably go with the first option of a front-end load if those are our only 2 options. But again, the award versus calculation is partly where this fell apart in my judgment of it. There also were not public hearings before. I'm glad to hear that they're going to talk to us, because one of the biggest problems is that this department in DHS does not seem to understand our financial structure. I've tried, I've had private meetings. They do not understand the difference between how a center financially runs and how a family child care. I think that we need to start making grant tracks that are separate, so we don't end up in this argument, which I hate that we're into this center and family child care. So I think there needs to look at it separate in that. I think if you look clearly at what many of us have been asking for is the front load of the FTEs, if that's the structure that we're stuck with. But also there are some pieces within the grant itself, such as a family child care provider can't be closed more than 5 days in a month or you get nothing. And that's significant. We should be able to go by our policies and our practices and our contracts. And trust me, I don't get 2 weeks every month to be closed. So we should be able to get those. The stakeholders, we need to have direct input. We've had that. When we look at the hardship that's coming, we have no clue that calculation is going to be taken into consideration how we do our businesses.
Well, thank you.
Those would be my comments.
Yeah, so Ms. Brown, if you want to take that 5-day maximum thing back home and look at that, that seems like that's confusing compared to even the center standards. But Ms. DeVos, as I'm understanding this better, so on the option 1, that actually front end loads the money and everybody gets more front end loaded. And we expected it would drop to half at the end anyway. So what's your thought on option 1, which actually adds more money up on the front end loading question? I know you're on the spot, but you don't have to.
No, it's totally fine. I fully support no changes until 2022.
Well, here's the problem with that. I'm just going to debate with you a little bit. The family care providers are being treated disproportionately, especially based on 32 hours. And a lot of them work 50. So I think it's the plan that was put forward is unreasonable to them. And so if we have to tweak it to benefit them, to get them, as you suggested, to some reasonable benefit, that's my question of you. And it looks like option 1 does that better than option 2. So anyway, you get to keep your opinion. I'm not going to try to change it.
No, but I just want to make sure that you're not putting words in my mouth. I want to make clear is that my center employees many of them are working 45 to 50 hours a week right now as well.
Right.
So where are we evening that out?
Oh, well, they would be credited in this up to 2 FTEs, a 32 is the base. If they're working 45 hours, they'd get 1.4 FTEs in this formula. So it would be the same
Would
amount.
support that. I would support that over pulling money away, but I do really think that we need to
Yeah.
take a hard look.
Okay, well, thank you. I understand. Questions from members? Senator Wickman, I bet you have something you want to say. Lucky guess.
I do, but I see Senator Nelson has her hand up, so certainly.
Well, why don't you go since you're there and then I'll
please.
call it.
No. Okay, well, I really appreciate DHS coming forward with this comparison for us, so we're able to look at possible options. I am really concerned about changing the formula or changing the way the money is distributed. For one thing, this idea that, if we do more now and then we have, a significant amount less for the second year, I really have concerns about that. But I mean, in general, the challenge, you mentioned the challenge of this disbursement of this $300 million. It comes about because this whole childcare system is so underfunded, and the money is simply not sufficient. And that's for all types of childcare. It isn't a family childcare or a centered childcare issue. It's all of it. And so the staff that are working these many hours and have done heroic service over the course of the pandemic, working, all the time through periods when many were sent home and didn't work. These childcare providers have been doing that, and that's across the board, family childcare and center-based care. And so I think the stabilization grants, as we have them formulated, are going to providers who care for children. And the focus on compensation, I think, is really important. It is a way to get some recognition to the providers who are doing the work in the homes and in centers of the hard work they've been doing. And it's a way to increase, hopefully will increase retention and the ability for them to continue in this field. People who are making, close to $12, $13, $14 an hour, this grant amount, it is going to be helpful, but it certainly isn't raising people out of even pretty minimum standards. And we need to keep doing more to assess, how do we value people's work, and, increasing the overall amount that goes into this program is a way to show that we value the work, and not to say that we need to shift it between types of people. I think option one, I think decreasing the amount for remaining for year two, I have concerns about that, because I do think that some people won't take advantage of smaller amounts later on. And option two, to change the amount that some people will receive, I think that is really problematic. We've also already indicated to people that this amount will carry through June of 2022. And to make a change now to decrease that, I think would be really demotivating and not productive, and not take us in a direction that we need to go. I think bottom line is that we need to look at the costs involved and the compensation that should be there. And then we should be assessing, how much would it take to actually provide that in the form of grants or other ways that we can support the childcare system. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in the whole system. And we need more providers to enter the system and want to be working as family childcare providers and center providers. So I think that's where we have a lot of work yet to be done. And it's not to, make slight changes to this current stabilization grant program. So,
Okay, no, thank you, and I appreciate those thoughts. I'm gonna remind everybody that under the current plan, there's 153 million going out the door in year one and 76 in year two. It's going to be cut in half anyway. By design, the payments will be 50% of what they ever, at the max, will be 50% of whatever they were. So, Senator Nelson.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I have a few questions and then some comments.
We don't have a lot of time, but if you can just kind of
Okay,
make your
I'll
questions
just
sort
be
of
very
pointed.
brief.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll be brief.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to do then, they're welcome to send me their answers. But here's the problem.
Go ahead.
Number one, I want to know what % of family child care provider applications are being accepted and also center-based, because there does seem to be a difference here.
Yeah, let's do that question. Ms. Brown, let's just talk about that one. Ms. Brown, do you know?
I'm sorry, can you restate that one more time?
Sure. Well, let me just give you some, there seems to be a problem with applications being rejected for family child care providers, for example, because they're being asked to not submit the full number of hours that they actually work. That's a bit concerning. And then, of course, there's the problem with needing to prove that they have an employee, even though in this one case, there's a daughter who was an employee, who was a legal employee paid by the entity, all of that. And then the department rejected her because she didn't pass a fingerprint background check. Well, those have been suspended during COVID. So there's a whole host of issues here regarding applications being accepted and rejected. And I'm wondering if you can just give me a brief update on that.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Senator. So we have received about just under 6,000 applications, and 300 of those applications we have asked for additional information from providers. I'm asking my team if they can give us the breakdown between family child care and center-based providers, and I'll have to follow up with you on, of those 300, what was the breakdown for each of those rejections.
Thank you.
Okay,
And then,
Senator Nelson, you have another question.
Yeah, I do. And then it appears that the department has come up with some sort of a magical number. $140 per month is maximum expenses for family child care. I just want to know where that came from. And it seems a little, well, it just doesn't quite tackle the issue, I don't believe.
Ms. Brown.
And so that's one I'll follow up with my team again as well.
Okay, and then
I'm not sure
Mr.
about
Chair. And then,
Yeah,
so, and so then, Mr. Chair, I will just say that providers need stabilization now in order for it to be meaningful. They don't need drops in a leaking bucket over the next 2 years. And I want the committee to know another 100 providers, this is in Minnesota, folks, have closed their doors permanently since DHS announced the stabilization grant. Just grab onto that for a minute. That is heartbreaking. And I want you to know that one of the best in Rochester closed her 4-star program after 28 years. Why? She's willing to take a job at Trader Joe's rather than deal with the stress of all of this that's going on for her and her family. And quite frankly, $430 seemed like a slap in the face, and it was a total letdown. And quite frankly, I would feel the same way. And yet we all say that childcare providers are unsung heroes, and we know that. We have felt that, we have seen that, and yet I don't think they're feeling the love today, Mr. Chair. I think the department has made it very hard for all of our childcare providers. And then I will send this to you, Mr. Chair, and others. But I just want you to know that other states are doing it differently. They are getting more money out the door right away. You could look at Alaska starting at a phase 1 at $5,500. Delaware has distributed funds in a way that's easy to calculate, like what providers use for taxes, time, space, percentage, among other simple inputs. So there are different models, and it just seems like our model is making it the most unadvantageous to solve the problem that we're so needing to solve. So, Mr. Chair, I've used enough time, but I will send out more information, but just a couple things. The application process has to be fair. It needs to be, I know there's been some streamlining, it needs to be more. And then most importantly, we need to get this money out the door when it's needed. And so I appreciate the time you've taken, Mr. Chair, to address this.
No, I appreciate it. I wish we had more time. So I think I don't see any more hands from members. So we're gonna wrap this up, but I read all the letters that came from the centers, and there were a bunch of them. Frankly, I think to get the money out the door quicker plan makes sense. I want to remind everybody listening, this is one-time money. And so if you're going to give $3 an hour raises permanent with one-time money, I would suggest you give bonuses and find a way to find the rest of the money. The federal government is $28 trillion in debt. And maybe more money will come in the $3.5 trillion plan or whatever, but that's the challenge we're under. So I do believe, I'll say this, I believe the plan put forward originally is inequitable, and it serves the centers well, and I don't want to harm them. I do not want to harm them at all, but I don't want to treat these homes not well either. And if the judgment of success over the course of COVID is based upon numbers, there's more childcare centers and about 15% at least less homes. So just in fairness, how do you think that we're going to address that by giving homes less money? So we're going to wrap it up, but I just, to the department, my clear vote is option 1, and thanks for working on it. And I appreciate all the challenges you all have. So thank everybody for that. Okay, now we're going to tackle another easy project. There was a proposal to have a task force, and a bunch of people signed up to testify. I really didn't want to get into a lot of testimony on this, but because we just have just a really big issue to address. But if I have an amendment that I brought forward that I would appreciate that if you could address that. I think that there's a error in how we wrote it. It could have been better, should have been more clear. We should have included a few more families and people with profound needs. I think the amendment gets in that direction if we can get that done. This is a sort of an amendment I'd like to try to get done in the short term if possible. This is only a draft, but it shows that my intent as the chair. And it also talks about what to do with people who are continually going to need the level of supports provided by the current program, which I do absolutely support continuing. And so there's just testifiers, but if you could do a minute and a half and kind of make your point clear and succinct, that'll be helpful. I'm willing to let you all testify. We got 6 of them now. I thought we were gonna have 0, but so Mr. Jaffe, if you could do a minute and a half commenting either on the whole big thing or on the draft I provided. And I think if we're gonna do maybe a working group on this, maybe Senator Utke, would you be willing to take this on and help me with this, and Senator Hoffman, the 2 of you?
Yes.
That's something you can do, Paul?
Yep.
Okay. And so knowing that, this is a new work group I just created suddenly. So I got 2 very capable people. So if you can just give them like a minute and a half of your thoughts, and then we're going to turn it back to them and see what kind of draft they come up with. So, Mr. Jaffe, welcome to the committee. Are you there? I see you're tuned in. Mr. Jaffe, are you able to turn your stuff on? When you get around to it, let us know. Let's talk to Ms. Nelson from Awesome, and then we'll come back to you, Mr. Jaffe. You can get your equipment to work. Welcome, Ms. Nelson.
Good morning, Senator Abler. I am so sorry. Bear with me 1 second while I pull up my file.
Your time is burning, so I don't want a lot of prepared speeches. I just like your comments off the cuff, if you don't mind, because we don't have a lot of time for a long speech. All right.
Well,
your
okay.
thoughts on the whole minimum wage deal and what you think about the changes. That's what I'm looking for. I know.
Absolutely. The Autism Society of Minnesota supports the amendment to make recommendations for alternative services for people with disabilities who are unable to find sustainable employment. And I genuinely believe that the reinvention of existing programs will end up being part of that answer. And thanks to the reinvention grants, we will have a really bright prospect on that. That amendment is the type of consideration that the disability community has been tirelessly advocating for. The Autism Society also supports the inclusion of parents on the task force. However, we would recommend that the framework of parent inclusion not be structured solely around the diagnosis of their child, but also on their experience within the situation. We propose that the amendment be amended to include one parent of a person currently in subminimum wage setting, one parent of a person who has successfully left subminimum wage, and one parent of a person who has chosen other community engagement rather than subminimum wage. We want to encourage the committee to encourage a wide perspective and a varied experiences of families to offer the greatest pool of insight as we embark on this important work. Additionally,
actually, that's okay. Just take up the additionally, then we're going to have to be done. Go ahead.
Additionally,
a minute and a half does. Sorry.
we would also like to ask the committee to further expand the task force to include organizations that represent disabilities that have a wide variety of support needs and experiences to allow for representatives that understand the full community need beyond the perspective of the single self-advocate or parent seats dedicated to neurodiversity or physical disabilities. We would specifically like to recommend the Autism Society of Minnesota and the Down Syndrome Association of Minnesota. These are two populations that are going to be drastically impacted by the removal of subminimum wage, and these organizations will be able to provide support and insight to make sure that the goals of the task force meet the unique needs of the entire community that often create employment challenges for these groups so that we can make sure the transition has the highest possible potential for success. And I greatly want to thank you for your continued dedication to this and for considering our recommendations. You, as a committee, have always been wonderful in moving forward the best interests of the disability community.
Thanks a lot. And just for people's advice, that was 2 minutes and 45 seconds. So I gave you the time because I respect what you need to do. So I'm not even sure if we're going to take all the testimony because at least if you could say something different than that, because that's actually really good advice. And we now set up a little working group that you will want to be a part of. So Mr. Jaffe, are you able to turn on your stuff there? If you can do it just a minute and kind of agree that we're on the right track or say something like that.
Okay, can you hear me?
Thank you. And you can join the work group too. So go ahead. Yeah, please.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, fantastic. My name is Alex Jaffe. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I'm a stand-up comic. I have Asperger's syndrome and ADD. I lived in adult foster care, and when I lived in adult foster care, I was forced to work at a sheltered workshop for subminimum wage. When I was forced to work for subminimum wage, it was dehumanizing, soul-crushing, and completely unacceptable. Knowing that society doesn't think that you can achieve more isn't a glass ceiling, it's a glass coffin. More is possible for this population. I am living proof. I graduated with honors. I have a car, my own place, and a good job that allows me to buy guacamole whenever I want. I know change is scary, but it is coming. It's better to have a plan before it shows up at your front door. Just look at Blockbuster Video. In closing, don't be like Blockbuster Video. Evolve.
That was 58 seconds. God bless you. There you go. Mr. McCourt, the bar has been raised. See what you can do in a minute, will you? You there? I mean, Mr. Jaffe has been amazing. So I don't know if you can top that testimony. Noah, are you there somewhere? If you're not, we'll go on and come back to you.
You might have to unmute him or whatever because I wasn't able to do that myself.
Oh.
Same with the video.
I don't see Noah in the room.
Okay, that's Ms. Wilson. Do you want to say something? Good morning.
Yes, you're putting.
So we now have a task. We now have a work group going on. So go ahead. Let's see if you can top Mr. Jaffe's distinct content.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Chair Abler and members of committee. My name is Brittany Wilson. I'm a self-advocate, proud disabled woman of color, super heavily involved with this and strongly support the task force. The only thing that I would really like to see on here is specific language that requests that at least one person who has been working in subminimum wage needs to be on the task force. Currently, there's nothing that specifically states someone with a disability must be on this task force who has worked in subminimum wage. And as you know, a rally cry is nothing about us without us. how can we consider a task force when we don't specifically say someone has to be involved that is in subminimum wage? So that is what I have to add today.
Whoa, 52 seconds. And I don't know, we could take a vote from members. Who had better content? Actually, they're both amazing. So Ms. Hankner, I know you have a group you're working with, and I hope you appreciate where we're going with this. I think it's going the right way. So Ms. Hankner, if you could do a minute, and then we'll take up longer discussions with the work group.
Okay, Senator Abler, thank you, Senator and members of the committee. I'm the parent of two disabled sons with IDD and multiple disabilities. I am the president of A-Team Minnesota. We are an organization of families of people who have developmental disabilities and multiple disabilities. And we're trying to educate people relative to not only this, but other things in terms of choice. We are about choice and informed choice per the person-centered planning. And so we advocate for all of that. And in terms of my personal background, I come from a professional background in, I'm retired, but professional background in education and business planning and administration. So that's part of the perspective that I come from. At one time, I was a special education teacher while I was in graduate school studying the psychology of learning. But with respect to what you're faced with in terms of this legislation, we have some concerns about the direction of it without having examined the necessary need for any change. So we would suggest that there be maybe something I would call a problem-solving business approach to this, where there'd be conducting a complete examination analysis of the efficacy of 14C in Minnesota. You know, let's take a look at who's being served, how they're being served, the wages that they're paid. What's really happening in terms of Minnesota? Let's take a good look at that. The second thing is conduct an examination of the states that have eliminated 14C. We need to take a close look at what their successes and failures and the results are of what they've done. We need to examine the ADA requirements needed to successfully employ people with mild to severe ID. And you need to engage the business community because they're going to be affected by this. But with respect to the proposed amendment, this is our thinking. There's no research-based studies to support elimination of 14C center-based work and life enrichment programs. The proposed language adds 3 members. Only one of those represents the population that is most affected by the elimination of 14C. The membership of the task force is substantially biased with members who want to eliminate 14C. People with disabilities and their families most affected by the elimination of 14C are not equally represented on the task force. Proposed language related to making the recommendations for alternative services for people overlooks an understanding of who is served that a comprehensive examination of existing opportunities would deliver. Mr. Chairman, that's condensed as much as I can make it at this point, and I appreciate the opportunity. But I look forward to further conversations with you on this topic.
Well, thanks. And now you know how quick 3 minutes goes. That's how long.
Yes.
So I saw Senator Utke and Hoffman are taking notes, and you could not ask 2 more capable individuals to take this on. So Ms. Bergstaller, did you want to say something? Are you there? I don't know if you're there or not, but somebody's here.
Hi, Chair Abler, I am here.
There you are. Hi.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Thank you for having me.
You get to work on the task force, so thanks.
Sure. I would just say if changes were made, I am a little bit concerned about the time limited nature of it and making sure that this task force would have the amount of time and resources to do what it needs to do. In order for it to be successful, we need to ensure that this task force has that time to be planful so we can avoid anyone losing employment or losing opportunities in employment. The language involving including parents, if that were to be a part of it, definitely would want parents of people who want competitive integrative employment, and parents of someone who used to be paid some minimum wage and have transitioned out of some minimum wage. As far as the recommendations for alternative services, my understanding is that maybe it is, I thought it was already embedded in the language, and that the point of this task force is to ensure access to meaningful jobs and inclusive environments. And so if we were to listen to people who have disabilities, prioritize inclusive, individualized approaches, I think we would be able to do that. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. And so Senator Aki and Senator Hoffman, I think this topic has been just a product of working in the dark in COVID. And this discussion, I kept saying, I wish I had 2 hearings to have when we were looking at some of this federal money. This is paid for, I think, by the FMAP. And the reason for bringing it up was because we were nervous that there's going to become another rule out of Washington saying you don't get these anymore. And so we wanted to be prepared. So I think that the people who testified make a good base of a group. If you want to be on that work group, Senator Aki, Tom will staff it for you. And so I would write Tom Brennan or Senator Aki or Senator Hoffman to say you want to be on the group. I think you've got like, I think you want to get something done in 2 weeks. So if something comes out of a special session, I think this needs to start really soon. I know the 2 of you are very capable about that. So with that, see what you get for showing up to a meeting, Paul, you get a job. But I think you want to say something, Paul?
No, it's only a side note. I had texted Senator Hoffman. I said I was late in joining. I just barely got my screen up and running, and I get assigned a job. I said, I'm going back on the roof.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But no, this is good because it is something extremely important. The extremes on both ends don't work. We got to pull something in there that protects those that need the sub-minimum wage, because there is a need, because without it, they're going to be in adult daycare, and we don't want that. And we all have our agencies that we are close to. The ones I'm close to up here do a wonderful job already. We don't need to do a thing because they're moving everybody into a regular wage as soon as they can. But, at the same time, if we've got those agencies that maybe aren't doing that, maybe we can help in that end too. So we'll look at it all and see where we come up.
And Senator Hoffman, did you want 15 seconds to say hello?
Yeah, hello. I think some of the work you started doing on WIOA, Senator Abler, the Department of Human Services on the 3 variations on employment exploration, et cetera, needs to be part of that conversation. I think Christy or Matt need to be, part of that as well. But you're right. I mean, the feds are going to go one direction, but at the same time, you just don't strike a note and say this is how we're going to do it without really looking at the system. And the system, Senator Abler, Senator Aki, I think it's 75% of the day programs are already not fulfilling their 14C certificate. So those ones that we need to protect and do, making sure that people have a place to go and are doing something that they want, informed choice, the individual. And also, I think the Disability Law Center, Maren, needs to be part of this conversation as well. So
yeah, well, you guys are the co-chairs, so get them all on board.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm pleased, and like you said, maybe we need to even broaden the language to make it even a better reform of the whole thing, just about how it might go to broaden out. That would be a really good discussion. You mentioned WIOA, I'm like, oh yeah, let's do that. So thank you, everybody. I think this is a successful segment. So moving to number 5, the nursing home vaccine rule, and Assistant Commissioner Rydrick is here. And are you going to tell me you don't know anything yet? Good morning to you. You there? Want to get away? Lisa, is she here?
Good morning, Senator Abler. I am trying to get a hold of Diane right now. I know she.
Actually, why don't you just tell us what you know? You don't know.
I am here. I hear her.
I am here. Oh, there you go. Okay. We almost.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. My apologies, Mr. Chair. I had to step away for just a moment, and I knew that's the moment when you would turn to me.
Okay. Well, welcome to the committee. So what do you know?
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Unfortunately, you may still have to vote me off the island because we don't have any more information now than we did a couple of weeks ago. We have not gotten any more guidance from CMS on the vaccine mandate, expectations, opt-outs, timelines. We have not yet seen the proposed rule. So we are still really operating in the dark. I think we had initially heard that it would be the end of September, and now we're hearing October, but have not heard, obviously we're into October and have not yet heard if it'll be early, late, or any estimated date.
Shocking, the federal government's running behind. It came up. Do you have any ideas that can include assisted livings? Do you even know that, or is it just nursing homes? Do you know?
Well,
or do you have
yeah, Mr. Chair, what we have heard is, we know that the mandate was announced for skilled nursing facilities. We also know that there was a mandate announced for all healthcare providers who take Medicare or Medicaid reimbursement.
Right, and that's separate.
That is separate.
It was just skilled nursing facilities.
So the first announcement was, Mr. Chair, was for skilled nursing facilities.
Yeah.
The second announcement was broader for any healthcare provider that takes Medicare and Medicaid, which most assisted living facilities do. We are working on getting a number for how many assisted livings might fall outside of that, but we certainly know that the vast majority do take either Medicare or Medicaid, so they would fall under that requirement.
And those are facilities as compared to like clinics, right? Is that your latest thinking and what little you know about the second?
Well, Mr. Chair, all we can speak to is what has been publicly announced, which is
you don't know anything.
I do on some things.
You ever watch Hogan's Heroes? There's a guy there who was like, anyway, Sergeant Schultz. How can you know?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure how I feel about that analogy.
Well, usually you're much more knowledgeable. That's why, by contrast.
I wish, Mr. Chair, I wish that we knew more. We know that when they announced the broader healthcare mandate, they mentioned that it applies to hospitals, dialysis centers, surgery centers, et cetera, to any provider that takes Medicare or Medicaid. But we have to wait and see the rule and see how broadly they apply that and whether they apply any exceptions at all.
Yeah, and there may be challenges to some of those too, which is only going to complicate things. So, well, thank you. Always good to see you, and thanks for telling me what you know. We have Miss Tiemann and Miss Zelensnikar. If you want to do a minute and a half, I think, are you members of the public? I know the second one is Miss Tiemann. Are you here?
Hi there.
Hi, welcome.
I'm really grateful I can share with you today. I'm Abby Tiemann. I am from West of the Cities. I've worked part-time as a CNA, which is a certified nursing assistant, in a long-term care facility for almost 13 years. At my facility, we currently have a 40 to 45% vaccination rate for staff. We've come to the point where no one else is willing to take that vaccine. I am one of them. I, along with many of that 55% of the staff, were willing to walk away from our job, potentially healthcare entirely, because it's creating a crisis. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services has not even handed down the mandate guidelines, where we're already losing staff. They know it's coming, and they're quickly looking for a new job where there is not going to be a mandate. In the last couple months, we've lost 6 nursing assistants, 3 nurses, and the administrator who has been working overnights. The staffing at the facility is already bare bones. We're exhausted. I get a text every single day. Can I pick up more hours? And when I go in, I don't know what I'm walking into. Am I in charge of 30 residents all by myself? Is there actually 2 nurses today? Right now, we're only at 50% capacity for residents, and we cannot take more because there is no staff to care for them. If the staff quits, we're going to create a huge crisis. There's going to be no one left to take care of the residents who are in need. I love my job and I love serving the elderly, but I, like many others, am unwilling to relinquish my freedom of making a personal health decision. Yesterday, a nurse friend told me she just put in her 2 weeks. She told me she wants to be able to have children someday, and she doesn't know that if she takes this vaccine, that she'll be able to have children. There is no study. And so she's walking away to preempt the mandate that is coming down. When and if the unvaccinated walk away from healthcare, those facilities that remain open are going to have staff that is on complete burnout. They also will quit because they're going to be exhausted. We're going to be failing the elderly if these mandates continue, and they won't be able to find a facility to serve them.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was I appreciate your comments. I'm really very worried about it too. And I think you said it so eloquently. I want to thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Have you, you might want to, looks like you had written some testimony down. You might want to send that to the Commissioner of Health.
Okay.
And to the governor, who are actually, they believe this is a great idea. And not to criticize them. Everybody gets their opinions, and we all have our opinions. But I think the reality, based upon the likes of you, is being underestimated. And what's going to happen to those seniors and people with disabilities? They're going to be unserved by people who want to go and work at a resort or something for better hours and a better personal life, or open up a business selling Amway or something, as a hope that they could do that. It's being totally underestimated. So, and I appreciate your testimony. So
thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Ms. Zalesnikar, we were corresponding. Welcome to the committee.
Hi, I'm in my car.
Okay, so you just like a minute and a half. Can you, if you can make your comments a minute and a half?
I'm going to ask the committee members. Thank you, Senator, for letting me do this. I think we need to hit a pause button. I've been doing this since 1983, started as a nursing assistant. I'm a nursing home administrator, and I have designed assisted livings. I've built them. I've been a CEO. I've been an entrepreneur. Wouldn't do that today. I've been asked why I'm still doing it, and I'm doing it for the residents. We have operated our business on choice, person-centered care, and HIPAA. We now have a paternalistic approach on somebody knows what's right. We did that in 1983. I don't know if anyone on this call remembers when we tied every resident up in a nursing home in vest restraints, wheelchair restraints, and we were told that syringe feeding and all those practices were best practices by physicians and nurses. I was told to do that. We don't do that anymore. And the same credentials for these physicians and nurses apply. Their judgment and their lens widened because they listen to the families and they listen to the people. If we don't create a culture where we listen to the people, there will be no one in northern Minnesota, rural Minnesota, southern Minnesota, big facilities, small facilities that are going to stay. The unvaccinated are going to walk out because they were all there for 18 months, keeping everyone's family safe, holding a hand when they died because we had people at windows when they couldn't see their family. They feel like they've been thrown under the bus, betrayed, and now they're not worth anything. That is not the culture I've worked to force, to create across the state as a leader. That's not even what I believe in. I've been asked why I'm not doing computer sales and other things. I could, but I'm staying to try to help get this state back to being Minnesota nice. We aren't even playing in the sandbox like Minnesota nice. I don't even know Minnesota anymore. We need to stop this. We need to listen to our aides. I've been working as an aide, as a CEO, an entrepreneur, and an owner. And you know what? I'm 55. I've had 8 surgeries from breast cancer. I've almost died from sepsis. 1 in 3 people are dying in hospitals every day. 8 million have died annually, globally, from sepsis, compared to what we have from COVID deaths, and nobody's concerned about that. And they're 20, 30, 40. So I think we got to hit a reset button, or every family member is going to take care of their own people at home. There will be no providers. They're going to close in record numbers. I get calls every day. Will I buy it? Will I run it? No. And there is going to be nobody. These are RNs, LPNs, CNAs, housekeepers, dietary. It is going to be mass exodus, and the vaccinated people are going to walk out too, because they can't take care of 40 people by themselves.
Yeah, well, thank you.
There needs to be a plan B.
Yeah.
There needs to be choice. There needs to be, let the people do it. And when I look at the statistics, I'm a math person. I love math. I look at the number of people that have COVID by our population. Do the math. We've got herd immunity. You know, just like we didn't cure influenza. We didn't clear Parkinson's. We got it all. You know, but we have made great progress. We're losing childcare workers, and we're losing healthcare workers and police and everything else.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm going to suggest that you write those same letters. And I think that the letters can be useful. I'm not sure I'm going to change the governor's perspective on what he thinks is a great idea. But I think if he understands the ramifications of implementing what he believes to be the right idea, that's got to get his attention. and it should get the
Everybody
president's
wants to
attention.
protect. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, I'm just
And
trying to make this be practical. So,
and I
thank
just
you.
know that there's not enough National Guard to go into every nursing home and assisted living in Minnesota.
Yeah. Any comments from members on this? So, Senator Upke.
Mr.
You want
Chair.
another task force? You want a work group?
Yeah, oh, sure. I'll be on a task force for this. I would enjoy it. But thank you to Abby and Natalie for what they just said. We're seeing the same thing. Of course, I'm in the deep rural area of Minnesota up here in the north, but the numbers are the same across the country like that. And Natalie said she loves numbers and math and such. And I think, as you know, we started this section out and you were asking the department, what do they know? And they don't know anything yet because the federal government hasn't finished their rulemaking. But I really, truly believe this is based on the numbers. And of course, they operate a lot on, if we get on the political side, the polling numbers. This does not poll well. And I think you're going to see this slide off and hopefully become a non-issue down the road. But the biggest concern right now is we've got staff that are nervous, they're quitting, they're finding a different job. We've got to retain those. And those of you working in the field, we're doing it up here. You got to stick together too. As individuals, we get trampled. But if you've got 20 of you all in the same predicament, stick together and stay strong, because our elderly, in this case, we're talking nursing homes, our elderly need you. We need you. You're doing a wonderful job, and we just got to try to get through this. But I fully understand, and I totally respect the profession that they love at a time in life when they need that paycheck. You know, as we get older, you get to a point where you got more flexibility. But when they're having to be put in and make that decision at this time, I mean, it's just totally wrong. And hopefully, staying together will keep the services we need. And I hate to put you through it, but we'll hope for better times ahead.
Thank you, Senator Hutke. Any other comments from members? I'm not seeing any hands raised. If I'm missing you, speak up. So otherwise, thank you very much. And just to, you know, how do we make this work in a practical way? And I think this has been a good discussion, but I think the people that think this is great and should happen need to recognize the consequence of promoting that more. And I don't think either of the testifiers are kidding. I think Ms. Tiemann said it just most succinctly, and Ms. Zeleznikar brought it in from the industry side. So anyway, with that, we're going to move on. Thank you. And Ms. Rydrick, when you figure out something to know, please, I know you'll let us know early, and I hope I didn't hurt your feelings with my stupid joke. So the competency restoration, we're only going to touch on that. And just to keep the discussion open, I'm just going to stick to something that's not even very controversial. It's going to involve work, but the piece that seems to be missing on this topic, and there's been a number of news programs on 2 different stations and some tragic stories, people getting shot on a bus. And so how do you help the person who's running around, who's got these, mental illness challenges? But then how do you protect the public at the same time? And at least from my point of view, and I would like reactions offline about this, when a person is deemed incompetent and not needing hospital level of care, which means they're not going to be an inpatient anywhere, whose responsibility is it to track them? So they've been civilly committed perhaps, and then they're released and they're in their own home, they're in a group home, they're in IRTs, some are in some jails, a third of them are in some kind of jail, there's 690, some of them in this situation, people in this situation. But so I think it's the county's responsibility to track these folks. And I think we need to act on that in the next session coming up, not for a special session, but with a thoughtful dialogue, at least who's going to track these folks? Because right now they're tracking themselves and they have a voluntary request to please become competent. So, and I don't know why that would be motivating to somebody so they could become competent so they could go to prison. That doesn't seem like that's going to make them want to do that. But at least the county should know where they are. And that's my thought there. And please tell me how wrong I am. So with that, we're going to move into it's a very significant matter that's come up about the department's vaccine policy, where they're requiring each state employee, there's over 30,000 some, and some are working at home, and so they don't have to do it, but there's apparently 27,000 employees who are subject to this. They're required to be vaccinated or get testing, which sounds so simple on the face of it. But what's happened is we've rolled out a brand new program, and there are some real kinks in there. And according to the MMB, there's 500 or so people that haven't consented, and we're going to have testimony from them. There's a couple staff, state employees that are actually willing to testify. And I just want to announce on the front end here, my goal on this is not to litigate the merits of vaccines or demerits or any of that. But my concern is, having heard from a number, I'm up to almost 40 state employees who I've had contact with, that have found themselves being treated badly in the system. And so how do we respect our state employees when there's a new program? How do we help them through? And that's my interest here. And my only concern with Mr. Back's story today was he mentioned Republicans are working on this. I can't imagine this is just a Republican thing to care about the proper treatment of state employees. So, I've had some communication now with 3 different commissioners about this. And I just think we need to do better. That's my goal here. And there's a website, they have a page that has over 2,000 people on it. So it's not a small number. We're going to put the rest of the time into this. And at the end, I have some suggestions that will hopefully be constructive. But for starters, we're just going to look into it all. And we're going to give the department, MMB, who's been charged with this, the first word. Last week, I put a request out to every major commissioner asking for details. That information was received last night, and everybody should have a copy of that. Thank you for the thoroughness. And I realized I should have asked a few more questions. But with that, Ms. Batson, welcome to the committee. And I know you have a little presentation, so thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair Abler, members of the committee. I'm Kristen Batson, Deputy Commissioner at MMB. I'd like to start by thanking you for your interest in the state's COVID-19 proof of vaccination and testing policy. Today, I'll provide a high-level overview of the policy and discuss how implementation is going so far. First of all, just a high-level description of the policy. The state strongly encourages agency staff to get vaccinated against COVID-19, and safety is a top priority, and this is the best way to ensure that our employees and the people we serve remain safe at the workplace. There is substantial value in vaccination. COVID-19 vaccines are safe and minimize the risk of serious illness, hospitalization, and death from COVID-19. Most Minnesotans who have been newly diagnosed with COVID-19 or admitted to the hospital are unvaccinated. In addition, CDC has found that infections with the Delta variant in unvaccinated people potentially have reduced transmissibility than infections in unvaccinated people. With highly contagious Delta variant circulating, it's more important than ever for unvaccinated Minnesotans to get their shot. An overwhelming number of employees are already complying with the state's COVID-19 proof of vaccination and testing policy. And agency staff who show proof of full vaccination against COVID-19 are not required to submit to the COVID-19 testing and are not asked to sign the testing consent form. For state agency employees who must work in person and are not fully vaccinated against COVID-19, they must undergo COVID-19 testing weekly. State agency employees who have an approved telework arrangement and are not required to work in the workplace or provide agency services outside of their home are not subject to testing. However, if they are not fully vaccinated against COVID-19, they will be excluded from voluntarily entering the workplace. So why is this policy important? As an employer, we are responsible to provide a safe and healthy workplace, both for our employees and the people we serve. This is consistent with OSHA guidance that requiring regular COVID-19 testing for employees who have not been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 will help mitigate risk to our employees and the people we serve. The CDC continues to recommend the use of the COVID-19 vaccine for people to protect against COVID-19. So how is this policy being implemented? Well, first of all, the policy went into effect on September 8th. And then we were asking employees who work in the workplace to submit proof of COVID-19 vaccination and assigned attestation. Employees who did not provide this information were then asked to sign a consent for testing. Once their agency had received this signed consent, the employee was then asked to begin testing using the testing method provided by that agency. There are challenges in implementing this policy, and I'll touch on those now. However, we do continue to make adjustments, and we are remaining committed to this policy because it's the right thing to ensure that our employees and the people we serve are safe and healthy. This policy is unprecedented. There is no one working in state government right now who has direct experience implementing a policy like this. So that's one challenge. Also, we're a very large employer. We have a diverse workforce. People do a lot of different jobs, and this workforce is geographically dispersed across the state. So there are some clear logistical challenges to making sure that we have testing options available for employees, no matter where they work. But each week, the process is getting more routine, and we're getting more compliance, and this is becoming more routinized. Last week, over 3,400 state employees were tested, and that number increases daily. Across all cabinet agencies, approximately 523 employees have not provided proof of vaccination or consent to testing. This number includes seasonal employees who are not currently working. The great majority of employees covered by this policy are complying with the policy, and we are still receiving proof of vaccination and testing consents every day, so compliance is increasing. So while there are some clear challenges, especially in this first month of implementation, we're making daily progress and moving forward the best way we know to maintain a safe and healthy work environment. Chair Abler, thank you again for your continued interest in how we're working to ensure the continued safety of our state employees and the people we serve. I'm happy to take questions.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm trying to decide what the best way to do this is. And I think I'm just going to go through the testimony and get everything out there. I have like 4 questions for you, but so let's just go through that and then we'll have ample time to discuss. So Mr. Johnson, did you have something you wanted to say, or were you going to react to questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a couple of things to outline the DHS experience for yourself and members. Thanks, Mr. Chair. My name is Chuck Johnson. I serve as Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Human Services. Our experience is very consistent with that as described by Deputy Commissioner Batson. Most people are compliant and continuing to work at DHS. We have almost 5,200 who have verified that they are fully vaccinated. We have been doing testing, did over 900 tests last week as part of the protocol. We only have 17 employees as of last Friday who have not verified their vaccine status or agreed to testing. Most of those, as Deputy Commissioner Batson said, continue to work. They're providing their own test results from a testing provider. We do have 4 that are in the disciplinary process. With these small numbers, we've had no disruption in service. We have been paying close attention. Particularly, we run, as you know, group homes where staffing is often only a handful of people. And so we always are trying to make sure that we're watching and ensuring that we have appropriate staffing, but that has not been an issue so far. As Deputy Commissioner Batson said, this was a policy that was done very quickly, and it was a challenge for all. I think we have done a good job of getting it in place, but we're learning more each week and continuing to improve the process as we go forward. Our HR team, our partners at Minikin, particularly our leadership in direct care and treatment, have done a great job of getting this set up. Because of direct care and treatment, we do run a 24/7 operation caring for vulnerable people. So it's particularly important for us that we maintain a safe workplace for our employees, but also for the patients, the clients, and the individuals that we serve. And that's why this policy is important to us. And we're pleased that our employees are following the new policy and cooperating in this effort. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate your comments. So let's just move to testimony. Ms. Tiemann, are you here? Did you drop off? I'm trying to find you on here. I don't see her. Anyway, Ms. Schwenke, do you want to offer your comments?
Hello.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story and what's been going on. So I'll start with this. My name is Liz Schwanke. I am a single mother of 2 young children. Today is actually my 5.5-year anniversary with CBS, Community-Based Services, where I love what I do. I serve the community, I serve clients, and I do serve the state of Minnesota. So as everyone knows, we were given the option to attest to our vaccination status or to submit to testing. When the testing policy came out, there was no information as to what it would look like, who would be doing it, where it would be done, if it would be a nasal swab or a spit test. So I didn't comply. I'm not going to sign a blank check. There just was not enough information in the policy. The following week, we were told that we would be testing in front of our supervisors. I still had privacy concerns at that time, so I did not sign on to this policy either, which brought on the Loudermill hearing, given the opportunities to share our side of the story, which I felt was a very interesting verbiage for us employees. Nonetheless, we were still given this opportunity to share why we would not do the vaccine or submit to testing. I stated my health privacy concerns was a major role in this. I also shared a belief of mine, an opinion, that testing should be done across the board regardless of vaccination status. It's my belief that vaccinated individuals are still spreading COVID and catching COVID. I believe it was the end of that working day that I was notified I was placed on an unapproved and unpaid leave. I was gone for a total of 9 working days. This does not include days off. Several of those days were actually approved vacation, which turned into unpaid in the end. So I waited around hoping maybe a new policy would roll out that was fair, that I could be included in. A new policy did emerge. I misunderstood it. I thought that I would be testing from home. I thought that my peers and I stood up and made some noise, and that this is why the new policy was going to be implemented. After talking with HR, getting some clarification, I was informed that because I shared that last piece at my Loudermill hearing, which was my belief that testing should be done across the board and my reasoning why, that is the reason I could not join on the new policy, and then I would have to test on my own time, on my own dime, which I thought was very ironic. I brought to their attention that this is the only thing we wanted. We wanted privacy. We wanted it to be fair, and now we're the ones being excluded from this new policy. While I was out of work, I suffered mental, emotional, and physical turmoil. I love my job. I'm taking a huge financial hit. My last check, the check that I will be receiving this Friday is half the amount it would normally be. And it would be a lot less had I not claimed 17 hours of overtime. For my next check to be the same half check, I will have to pick up 3 additional overtime shifts. I don't see what the harm was in allowing me to test from home. I made it very clear that my issue was with my health privacy being respected. Yet HR told me that they combed through every single person's statement through the Loudermill hearing. And I kind of feel like it kind of felt like a bit of a trap. Here we are giving our explanation as to why we won't vaccinate or give up our health privacy. and then they're combing for reasons to exclude us from the policy. I know there's not that many of us, but with that being said, what would the harm be in adding our name and our address to that list of people that just want their health privacy respected? Meanwhile, my coworkers are working double shifts, missing out on family time. The burnout, which was already there, just increased. We have people calling in every single day. People are looking at shifts. I don't believe it's actually happened yet, but the fear is there because of the burnout. I have to drive 45 minutes to test. I already work full-time for the state. I give them enough of my time and energy. I'm a full-time parent somehow between working full-time as well. Because my belief and opinion was shared at my Loudermill hearing, I'm excluded from this new policy. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's too late for them to make it fair or right for those of us. I don't think it's fair to penalize us for sharing our beliefs and opinions. I don't think it's fair for them to comb through our stories seeking reasons to exclude us. I do feel that I've been discriminated against. I'm not the only one in my house. There are a few of us actually, like-minded individuals. We are extremely short-staffed at the program that I work at before this happened. And then they took 3 of us out. We're losing pay. Our clients are suffering. Their quality of life will not be the same if this continues. I just think that it's not too late to make things right and to give us the respect that we deserve. We put in a lot of time. We're abused, we're disrespected every single day on the job. And all we want was our health privacy to be respected. And I don't think that is very much to ask for.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate that. And I have a lot of thoughts. We're just going to move through testimony, but thank you very much. And I got the name wrong. I'm sorry, I missed, I announced the testifier from the last bill. So Mandy, and I don't remember your last name right now. I'd like to hear from you if you will.
It's Hellman, Amanda.
Okay, well, welcome to the committee.
Thank you. So Liz really captured a lot of the big issues with this. I'd probably want to go a little bit more into detail on the discriminatory nature of the way that they implemented this policy when they decided to single out only one group of people and then make them publicly walk through their sites to be tested when people know who is and isn't. Vaccinated don't need to. Vaccinated are free to come and go as they please. Unvaccinated have to make sure they come in on a certain day and go into an office in front of their supervisor, walking by their peers, and take a test. That is a really messy way to put people on the line and our privacy not be protected. And not only do I find it discriminatory, but also it's punitive that we wouldn't sign a consent form that had staggering information coming. Like Liz said, we didn't know what the route would be. We didn't know when or where or how. And when we brought these concerns, we kept getting told we didn't know. It might be this, it might be that. We're looking into this, we're looking into that. But sign this anyways, or else. And so we didn't sign because I don't know what I'm signing. And I'm not going to be placing my career on the line by signing something. And then when I find out what the information is specifically, not adhering to it. And we know that it's transmissible and spreadable. It's been demonstrated. Vaccinated can spread it as well as unvaccinated. So to single us out and then publicly shame us essentially by having us test on site was inappropriate. We do have the right to privacy. That is a constitutional thing that this country still supports. And so implementing policies like that and then taking punitive measures against people that wanted it to be addressed is extremely inappropriate. I am as well a single mother. I lost my 9 days of pay too. I have rent and car payments like everybody does and bills. And putting that on the line, I did stand up and say, I'm not going to sign on to this until I know what I'm signing. And I don't think that it's inappropriate to know what your employer is having you sign, what you're agreeing to. So now I am as well not allowed to participate in this program where they can mail it out to the homes, because I said I find it to be discriminating when I'm the one who's going to be walking through and easily picked out who's made what decisions when it comes to vaccines and medical care. So I'm in support of what Liz said, but those are also things I think that stand out exponentially when MMB supports people not being discriminated against. To implement such a policy on a group of people, I think was extremely inhumane and shameful. So I appreciate you guys taking the time.
Oh, well, thank you, Ms. Selman. I'm sorry I got your name mixed up there. And just so you know, I mentioned I've got a folder here of communications with about 40 different people, not just DHS. I asked to testify on behalf of DHS today because that's the turf that I have. There could have been a number more from DHS. There were even more from MnDOT and Minnesota State colleges, whatever they call themselves, the BCA, MMB, and the Department of Corrections that had very similar stories. And I'm going to start out. My goal here is to restore these people into the good graces of Minnesota. Ms. Batson, you mentioned you're rolling out a program. There's always to be expected rollout. I mean, not getting into the weeds on vaccinations, good or bad. But this is about how do you treat people that are treasured workers in a time when there's not enough to go around. And I think that message was clear from those folks, and they were sincere. They're happy to comply. If a number of people felt like they were coerced, they used the word duress. The duress is the quick trip to unpaid leave, because you're not allowed to do the consent form because, oh, you don't consent. But I will offer to you that the governor has unequal bargaining power on this. Here comes the order. Where is it? The big long, here you go, 10 pages, fill out the form. Can't change a word or you don't get to work here. I guess employers have that kind of power. I guess the governor under 1239 thinks he has the power to do that to people. But if you're going to do that, you got to do it humane. And of the individuals who did not sign, they had questions. They said, well, what's the test? I don't want a swab stuck up my nose. Ethylene oxide is actually a dangerous chemical. Some people thought there's fiberglass in it. They didn't want their nose rubbed every week for the foreseeable future. They're like, oh, could I just do the saliva test? Questions like that. And so ironically, for the people that wrote the word duress, duress implies an unlawful act. So the people that were put to the curb because they used the word duress actually were using the wrong word. And so that word doesn't even exist here because officially the governor is lawful in this, and then you can argue about it if it's what he should have done. But the word coercion is not. And so work here, fill out the form or you're gone. I talked to a woman who's 1.5 years from her rule of 90 at a state college. She's walking. She's like, I'm done. That's not what we're looking for. I don't think. There is so in DHS, the woman was talking, and I hope that more would have come forward. Some were nervous to have some retaliation. I have no concern at DHS that those two women will be treated any differently than anybody else. So I know that that's not something they would ever do. They believe in a respectful workplace policy. They also believe that people get to speak their minds. But I can tell you in terms of how people like them have been treated with their privacy and being shamed as a DOT employee, some supervisor at 3rd District that somebody writes should be fired. He lined up his staff for the morning's work and singled out 3 or 4 people that hadn't signed the form and said, sign the form. What are you doing? Is that what you had in mind? Do we have in mind that people should walk across the room to go to the kitchen in a DHS facility and do their saliva test in front of a camera, in front of all the staff and clients? That's what's happening. And so it's going really well. No, it's not. And at the end of this, I hope that we can get back to treating state employees with the worth that they have. And AFSCME was unable to attend, but they sent a letter. And I would like to just read a part of that. And then at some point we'll go to questions and comments. But this is from them. It's in the packet. It says, AFSCME Council 5 does not support a mandate. That may not be known. That was not known to one commissioner I talked to. Though we understand the importance of achieving as high a vaccination rate as possible, and we encourage all of our members to seek advice from their medical provider regarding a receipt of the vaccine. And we understand that some people have personal, medical, or religious reasons which factor into the individual's decision, and those decisions should be respected. I will opine that they have been not by policy of the state, who's ever at the top of this thing. And 500 people with reticence or more, some signed really under coercion. They couldn't afford to lose time off. And so they go on. And again, we encourage all our members to consult with their medical provider and consider the benefits of getting a COVID vaccine. And we recognize the decision is ultimately an individual one. And the indignity of losing employment and the ability to provide for oneself and family should not be used to entice vaccine compliance without a testing alternative. So they want to make sure that the testing remains. And then finally, they go on, but this is just what I'm going to read of it. This critical element must be maintained in any future iterations of the state employee vaccine policy. Additionally, ease of access to COVID-19 testing is another important part of workplace vaccine policies. Testing should be free to the employee and offered in the most convenient manner possible. And I could not agree more. So at this point, I have more questions, but I'll yield to other members not to monopolize things. So does anybody want to weigh in here? Senator Utke. Paul, did you have your hand raised, Paul? Oh, I'm sorry. Thought I saw your hand. You're muted, Paul. Paul, you're muted.
Like, sorry about that.
Bingo, yeah.
Myself, I guess that way
we haven't had to say that all session.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a few different questions, but first of all, we're talking about this and the form that got sent out. We have HIPAA laws and personal freedoms. How can they even do that? That's my first question. And then, we talk about the number of, it was that, the comment was made, they're asked to sign a consent form. And then what if they don't? And and then it was also the comment was made, this is the right thing, but in whose mind is it the right thing? We've got an issue because there's a lot of employees that say, this isn't the right thing. And it goes back to our personal freedoms and the HIPAA part of it again. We've got laws that protect us from revealing our medical treatments, etc. And then the last piece I'll put in here, and then you guys can see who wants to address this. But for those that are not participating, what percentage are just able to work remotely? And actually, does working remotely exempt you from having to fill out this form and declare whether you're vaccinated or not, or go through the testing, or are they still required to do the same?
Ms. Batson, do you want to tackle that? Those several questions.
Yes. This policy is only covering employees who are required to work in the workplace. So employees who are able to telework do not need to show proof of vaccination or test on a weekly basis.
There were some other questions too about, actually, maybe it's the 1239 question or HIPAA came up. So if you can comment about that.
Sure. Our focus in both data practices and HIPAA is around data. And this data that we're collecting is private employee medical data and is treated as such. I can't speak to the individual circumstances that the employees that testified talked about. I have not been briefed on the specifics of those circumstances. But as I said in my comments, the workforce is geographically dispersed, highly decentralized, and state employees work from a large variety of physical settings. So it is not a shock to me that we may have a little work to do around the physical setup of how we administer testing.
Senator Utke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one follow-up, and this is kind of a broad thing, but we do have a couple members here from Deputy Commissioners of DHS. It would affect the Department of Human Services just like our departments across the whole state. You've got to have had conversations about you're going to lose employees. How is that going to affect you? And what are you going to do to maintain the services? Because, it's one thing to lose somebody in the office that says, I'm not going to participate, and we slow down the process. I can go to the other side, and the number of state troopers that have contacted me that have said, we're either retiring early or we're quitting. We've got a lot of jobs around the state like that we need them. It's critical. And so can you share with us anything about what the departments are talking about? Because that's got to be on the forefront of the conversation. How are we going to keep our staff or at least maintain our numbers?
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Utke. Yes, that has definitely been a consideration and something we've been tracking, certainly anticipating in advance of the policy being implemented and tracking it as we're in the process of implementing. And as I said, right now, our numbers are okay, but we are, as you suggested, under the same workforce challenges as other community providers. And so we are monitoring closely and ensuring that we have the staff that we need to keep our services covered. Certainly, if it gets to a point where we have a crisis going on, we would need to review that and consider whether there are other options we need to look at and work with MMB on that potentially, but we're not at all at that position right now. I would also say that, and I appreciate the testimony from Ms. Schwanke, and I did not catch the last name of the other testifier on their experiences, and obviously can't talk about individual employees, but I will follow up to understand what was happening there. We are doing now with, and I thought we were from the beginning, but I can check on that with the people who work in community-based services, the home-based testing, where it's mailed and it's not done on site, as Ms. Schwanke suggested. Eventually, she understood the policy to be that is what we're doing with those employees, which I think will help for some of them. I would also add, we've heard from a lot of employees, and we've heard concerns similar to the ones you've heard here today. We've also heard from employees whose response was finally, you're going to help people, drive people toward getting vaccinated, because we've been walking into unsafe work environments for 18 months to care for people before there was a vaccine. And then when the vaccine came, we got vaccinated, and we still worry walking into work with people who might be spreading the infection. And so we're always trying to balance that within our workforces and the needs of all the individuals in our workforce, and trying to represent what those needs are on balance. But to your question, Senator Utke, yes, we are carefully watching our services.
Thank you. Senator Nelson? Did you have your hand up? Oh, you're muted too.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My comments are a little more general, and so if you want to take them at the end, fine, or I'll make a couple, just a broad comments and a question now, if you'd like.
Go ahead. Yeah, just.
Okay, I don't want to derail. Yeah, I don't want to derail the testimony that right now. I just want to make a couple comments. It's just so important that we maintain the things that we already have in place, like our HIPAA requirements, our data privacy requirements, our employer freedoms, our employee freedoms, and our vaccine exemptions. We have to keep all of those things that have worked in the past in front of us now. And I know you're working towards that, but then I also want to just just to help maybe ground us a little bit, just think about what has happened here in the last 18 months. We had this novel virus. We knew nothing about it. We knew how it was devastating China and what has happened over here. But think about what's happened here, folks. Now we have testing. We have treatments. And in fact, we have gone from having monoclonal antibody treatments, infusions that you can't get at home, to we're very close to having a 5-day pill to take when you have COVID. Kind of in my non-medical mind, it sounds a bit like the Tamiflu prevention in a sense. And of course, we have therapies now. And we have, as I said, many different types of testing that people can do at home, for example. And of course, we have vaccines as well. And so I guess my big question is, with this hearing and so much concern within our state about, the rights of employers and the rights of employees. And employees always have a right to determine where they want to work or not. And employers have certain rights about what they require of their employees to be part of that workforce. And the question that I have has to do with the concern, which I definitely understand. And number one, I don't think government should be mandating any vaccines, but I don't believe that nor should government get in the way of private employers with the long arm of government coming in, telling them more and more how to run their businesses. But here's my question. I know that employers have different requirements. For example, for the longest time, trucking firms have had requirements, as probably many others, that employees take a drug test. And so my question to the department is, well, what's the difference between having an employer requiring that employees take drug tests? And I imagine there could be government employees that must take drug tests. I'm not sure. I just know about the trucking firms. So what's the difference between that and an employer requiring a COVID testing? And why are we not having the same protections in place regarding privacy and that type of thing?
Madison.
Yes, thank you, Senator Nelson. There is not a lot of difference in the examples that you gave. Employers have the right to implement policies that they need to operate their businesses. And so in the interest of health and safety, we have gone forth with this policy to keep our workplaces safe. We are working very hard to protect the data, the employee data that is associated with this policy. There was an example given by a testifier in this hearing around the logistics and them feeling that they didn't have, that they were too exposed. And that we will address after this hearing. But as I said, state workplaces show up in a huge variety of physical locations and circumstances. And it sounds like these examples were in a place, a physical location that was difficult to do that. And we can address that after this hearing.
Okay, Senator Wickland.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment from what I've heard today and what I'm reading in the information that the departments have provided to us. It sounds like there is work underway to improve processes as they need to. And I think with a big program like this, deploying it to many thousands of people, I think that it will, there are going to be experiences and need for processes to be improved. I just want to balance that against, I believe we are seeing increased hospitalizations. I read in the paper today that hospitalizations are at the highest point they've been at this year. And, we really need to consider the safety of the employees working in environments and the public coming into contact with employees. And I believe that should be very high high importance, especially when we know that for unvaccinated people, are experiencing, much higher rates of being the ones suffering from severe illness, hospitalizations, and deaths. And what we need to do to prevent unnecessary deaths is to encourage people to get vaccinated and to be, if they are not, and they have an option to, in this case, to be tested regularly. I just think that the data show that vast majorities of the people in the hospital in ICUs are suffering from COVID are unvaccinated. And so we need to do what we can to prevent unnecessary hospitalizations, unnecessary illnesses, and unnecessary deaths. Thanks.
Thank you. And I wish we had a little more time. Actually, I was talking to Senator Kiffmeyer. We may be having another hearing next week. The joint hearing with state government and us, perhaps next Thursday. Stay tuned for that. Just want to offer a few more comments here. So I appreciate the department, MNB, giving us this notice. I clicked on one of the links right in the middle of the first page. According to the CDC, when you click on that link, you get this report from the CDC, and it says in there, fully vaccinated people with Delta variant breakthrough infections can spread the virus to others. And so I'd like to just to repeat, like Ms. Schwenke said, that she got unpaid leave because she believes this heresy. Oh wait, no, it's from the CDC. It's also discovered in Israel. There's an article about that. They had a huge outbreak of nosocomial hospital-based infections in a highly vaccinated population. And so what are we doing? And if I'm in we didn't talk about the hearings that people get, but I'm very interested going forward, and not for now, but how many of those hearings, I can't remember the name of them right now, that people get to have before they get sent out the door, how many go well for the employees. If you let's say you use the word duress in a sentence early on, and I've spoken to a commissioner about this, there's no way to recant that. And so if you tell people that you feel like you're being bullied, which I believe this does to people who could sense that, or feeling coerced, then signing the form, the consent form, doesn't count. And so that signature is invalid, and then you're put into your own testing, at which point you have to come back with a negative test before you can go to work. And then you lose some time, you have to do your own testing. According to the department, apparently that's not considered discipline. I consider discipline having to do your own test, losing time, or being on unpaid leave, or having to go through this whole process of explaining why they shouldn't fire you. There's a guy in MAPE. He requested he resign the form. MAPE requested that he be allowed to resign the now revised consent form, which used to have a liability waiver in it, and which, thank goodness, you took that out. It said in the original form that people were given to sign on no notice, 2 or 3 days notice, that if something bad happens, good luck to you, the state's not going to pay. And people objected to that for good reason. And then it came back without that. So thank you for updating that. The office manager said she doubted MMB would allow that to happen, to re-sign the form and get back on track. That's part of my conclusion getting out of here. This is from a man who works at Minnesota State. And I just want you to show, just to be fair to DHS, this is everywhere. In fact, our head HR person is openly sharing posts that are very derogatory toward employees that choose not to get vaccinated. And so I'm going to remind you all that you have someplace in my papers here, there's a respectful workplace policy. This is all about treating our state employees well. It's not about people in the hospital. So as people in the hospital, we should treat our employees badly? No. Let's treat our people like we wish we would be treated. And so I'm going to offer you some suggestions. And maybe you want to write these down. This is on video. We want to treat all our employees respectfully. 9 out of 10 at least of the people I've communicated with want to comply. They want to sign the form. They're happy to do what you want. They had questions. They wanted to know what happens, what is unpaid leave? What does that mean? Are my health benefits going to stay intact? Am I going to lose my job? How long does it go? People that were put on unpaid leave weren't allowed to use their sick time, vacation, or their compensatory time. That doesn't sound respectful to me. And so this young woman who spoke here lost 9 days of work, of paid work, canceling even a vacation that had been scheduled. What are we thinking? All should be allowed to test at home for free. Let's just roll it back a little bit. That's the purpose of this hearing. Is like these folks, the 40 people I have communicated with had nowhere to go. And I wound up meeting them. And then I suggest strongly, you restore their lost hours and their pay. If a person is like, no, I'm not doing any of this, well, that's such a rare case. You can deal with them in your regular discipline. But I think if you give people a chance, you're going to recoup some of these people that are quitting, and you're going to find a way to take the load off. And you're going to tell your HR people and your supervisors, what are you doing? You should be under discipline. I'm going to put you on unpaid leave for violating the state respectful policy. And so this is my suggestion to every commissioner who's going to listen to this and every HR person. You review all the Loudermill. You review all the Loudermill hearings and find a way to rescue those folks in staff, especially if they were respectful and just had opinions, especially ones that are considered valid by the CDC. I'm going to consider you let everybody self-test at home with the saliva test. It doesn't invade them. And then you look at people that are on the Loudermill, people on the self-test list, and people on the unpaid leave list, and rescue these up to 500 people. We cannot do without them. I think you will find them to be grateful. And I think that's the way out of this thing. And I think no one has to question intent or error. You just like, oh, it was a big program, rolled that out kind of clumsy. That's my solution. And we don't have any state employees to waste. They work too hard. They put too much stock in Minnesota, and they've put, in many cases, 30 and more years. And they just want to complete their career as a snowplow driver, as a professor. Well, not the professors, I think they're out of it, but as a worker on a campus. So anyway, that's my summary. Happily to, so that's what I have. Any other members wanted to say anything? If you do, just well, I don't. Senator Rucky, is your hand up, or did you mean that? Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I did have one more comment if I could. I hate to come in after you had your wrap up, but going back to the question I had about the percentage of employees that opted out of the testing by working remotely, could Deputy Commissioner Batson, I mean, this isn't something we need a number on right now because you probably don't have it handy, but if you could reply back to the committee, what that percentage is of our state employees that are being able to opt out by working remotely. And I think that's an important number because, and are they wanting to stay home, that type of thing. But a follow-up would be great. It doesn't need to be right now.
Ms. Batson, go ahead.
Sure. Senator, the total executive branch workforce is about 36,000 employees. And about 25,000 of those are required to work in the workplace on at least a part-time basis. So there's about 10,000 state employees who are currently teleworking full-time.
Senator Aki.
Thank you. That helps. That's what I was after.
All right. Well, I appreciate this. And part of why I'm suggesting a follow-up is I don't think that Ms. Batson, and I mean, you're right on the spot, or Mr. Johnson, or any other people working there really thought they'd get down this road. And so I'm counting on what I believe to be hugely good intent in the face of a policy that's challenging and some people don't necessarily appreciate. But if I could get you 500 employees tomorrow to fill in some of the gaps created by the 500, you go like, hey, where are we going to find those people? And my suggestion is just don't have to fill the gaps. And I said I won't repeat it. Well, maybe I will, but just let them all test at home for free. They want to be on the list. Don't make them drive 45 minutes or worry about paying for it. One woman had no idea. She thought it was $140 a test. I don't know what they cost. And then give them back their pay. We screwed up. I mean, we the great thing is I didn't mean it. Give them back their like follow ASME. Give them the honor and the integrity of their job and keep them. So anyway, so I want to appreciate everybody's time. And we'll keep you posted about next week. Thank you, Senator Utke and Senator Hoffman for working on that other project. We have much work to do. And I want to remind everybody that we all care about the people we serve. In this committee in particular, we have not, we've focused on the clients, and now we're focusing on the staff that surround all this. And I hope that everybody feels encouraged and that I've given the agency and the governor or whoever is deciding all this kind of a path forward that we can say like, yeah, that makes sense. And then I'll just say thank you to everybody when that happens. So anyway, enjoy the rest of your week. Appreciate it all. Thank you. We're adjourned.